In this video, we're going to take a look at Disassemble the STIHL FS280, also identical as the STIHL FS160, FS220, and the FS290. The first thing wants to be done is these 4 screws for the cover need to be removed. Then the cover could be removed. You have 2 screws on the side for the air cleaner to be removed to gain access to the carburetor. And on the muffler side, we have 2 screws to be removed here. Then we have one on the side here and one here for removing the muffler. Also, removal of the spark plug wire. Careful attention must be taken when taking this apart. You don't want to damage the contact inside. And using the tool for removing the spark plug. Careful inspection must be taken with the spark plug to make sure that it's in this color. You do not want it to be black or wet, because that will be a sign of too much fuel or too much oil. Now when we take a look inside on the piston, you can see how the side of the piston is scored and the ring is actually worn out. So this is a sign that the cylinder, the piston, and the ring will need to be replaced. But first we're going to try and disassemble the piston cylinder to look inside to see how badly inside the cylinder bore is scored. That's the cylinder wall. We want to take a careful inspection to see if it's salvageable or if it needs replacing. On the top of the cylinder, you're going to notice 4 bolts, 4 bolt holes for releasing. 2 on this side and 2 on the other side. One thing that you should know is you're most likely going to be able to use this tool for gaining access down to the bolt on this side. You can see it's all the way down on the screw for removal. But when you try to use it, it's good for here too. When you try to use it in the rear, it's not going to be able to make its way all the way down. So actually it is. Before, when the engine was cool, it was not able to do so. So we want to remove these 4 bolts, and you also have, you can see right there, a flat screwdriver will be able to release the intake duct from the cylinder. So that has to be unscrewed and detached from the cylinder. With the 4 bolts for the cylinder head removed, or the cylinder, we are now going to need to remove these 2 nuts for the carburetor, getting this part out from its compartment so the carburetor could simply be laid back, not completely removable, for detaching the duct in here for removal. Once the 2 nut is released from the carburetor, you will have these 3 bolts to be removed. One of them belong with the throttle adjuster linkage. So you're going to have the carburetor just laid back like that. You don't want to disconnect this hose for the fuel supply because you will most likely damage it. This hose here simply slides out from here when you're going to be pulling the carburetor away from its fitting compartment. Now those 2 bolts, one's from here, one's from up here, and one is from here for grounding this cable. Once you have the carburetor removed, now you're going to be able to take the cylinder out by pulling it away from the rubber garment between that you see right there. Get a look at detaching the cylinder from its fixture. So you want to place a cloth here. You can use a screwdriver or something for prying it up. When prying this part up, you want to make sure the tool reach underneath this exhaust flange right here. You don't want to put it on the fin because you could bend the fin and break it. You want to get up in that area and lift it up. So you see, that's how you're going to be able to detach the cylinder head or the cylinder from the machine. So this clamp, once you release the screw, you're going to have to slip it off the rubber duck, pushing it back. Then you're going to have to work a screwdriver, your flat screwdriver, from the bottom of on the bottom at the rear for popping it off. This lip, you can see there's some scratch mark in it from the screwdriver. That's okay. At the same time you're doing so, you're going to need to move the cylinder away from the duct so you can see what we have there. So now we just want to lift the cylinder away the piston, and it's very difficult. So when we take a look in there, you have to pass a finger in there to make sure that it's absolutely smooth, even though it has a little scratch on it. If those are little scratches that does not have a imprint or a feel to it, most likely a very fine 2000 grit sandpaper will be able to detail that. So that needs to be taken care of. Now let's take a look at the piston. So there's a little feeling here. So what we're going to do here is, all here we have a little feeling. So what this engine needs is new rings. The rings are stuck, and that could be a sign of carbon buildup and cause the ring to get stuck in its groove, and that will cause a loss of compression. So you can see down in the engine there, it's fairly new. It only had an operation of maybe 50 work hour. So the rod connection is good to the piston and the crankshaft. There is a pin in here that needs to get removed for getting the piston pin out. That will be called a wrist pin, and then the piston can be separated from the connecting rod. So when we take a look at the top of the piston dome, there's not that much carbon buildup, which is a good sign. The carbon seems to be where the rings are. So the rings are going to have to get removed. Purchase new ring, sand this area. So we have to take a feel inside here, and the cylinder feels absolutely smooth. So there's no damage in here, because what we have here, you can notice, is a stainless steel sleeve pressed into the cylinder. The cylinder is not aluminum. It's a stainless steel sleeve, and then it's cut by the machinist for what you see there. So you have to get in here, clean it up. The best thing for cleaning this would be the purple blaster. So let's start cleaning it up, and then we're going to take a look at assembling it. So we're going to need a new gasket for here, or we can use a sealer if you don't have the gasket. There is the cylinder head, or cylinder, soaking in the purple blaster for decarboning for careful inspection. Now we want to take a look at the piston ring where the gaps are. So we can see facing the intake side, the top ring has a groove right there, and the lower ring has a groove right there. So that will be where the gap are for the piston. Now normally it will be better to have one gap over here and one gap over here, placing the distance away further in the event blow-by should occur during normal engine operation. But this is the way the manufacturer set it up for. So this is the way it will most likely have to go back when assembling it. That's the bottom ring groove over there, and that's the top ring groove over there. It will be best to use some form of lubricant like you see we have in the yellow can for spraying it where the piston ring is, letting it sit for a few hours so the carbon could emulsify, allowing easy removal of the piston ring. When it comes time for removing that clip that holds the wrist pin or the piston pin in position, you see there's a groove right here that you will have to place a probe into, or a very fine pointer, metal pointer, and just pop that ring out of its groove. Same thing on the other side. So that's the groove right there. You'll have to get a very fine, more fine than this screwdriver, very thin, hardened tip, and just pop the pin out, the clip out. Then you'll be able to slide that pin out of the piston from its connecting rod and detach the piston from the connecting rod for replacement. Let's take a look at popping this this wrist pin out of its location. So you can see I've developed a special tool by using a screwdriver, filing the ends down to meet that profile, so we could get it into this area right here. And just lifting that pin out of there. Now when you pop it, it's going to fly out of there, but it's right here. It's a very, very small ring. So you need to make sure you take cover of that. So we could try to push the pin out from the other side to see if it will remove itself. But if not, we'll have to remove the other side wrist pin. Let's take a look at that. Now this side is not going to be as easy as the other side. So we're going to have to look for that. Most likely it could fall down in this area here. So you'll just turn the machine over to see if you can get it out. Now trying to slide the pin out is not going to be that easy. So it most likely has to be tapped out from there. What needs to be done here for getting this piston pin out of the piston, you're going to have to use a socket like this. This is a 5.5 millimeter 1/4 inch drive socket. So you're going to have to place it on the piston pin and using another tool for just smacking it out. So when we take a look, you can see the pin is moving to the other side. When you look at this side, you can see the pin is traveling. So what's best here, like I said, you always want to use some lubricant for lubricating the area. Now when you're going to be doing this, you want to make sure you hold the piston and the drift pin. So the goal here is not to get the pin all the way out. You just want to drift it enough so the piston can be lifted off the connecting rod. Now we take a look again. You see how far the pin is out. Now to continue drifting the pin more out of the piston, I'm going to use this 1/4 inch extension, placing it in here, holding the piston and the 1/4 inch extension. So unfortunately we have taken the pin all the way out and it's in great condition. Now we could remove the piston and we have to look in there for markings to see if it specifies how many millimeter is the bore of the piston, whether if it's a 38, 35 or a 40 millimeter piston. So this is going to be placed into the can for cleaning, and then we could try to see if we could remove the ring. The ring is not able to remove because it's most likely stuck on this area here where it's scuffed up the most. So the piston is softer than the cylinder wall. This is why you see the mark on the piston. Sometimes the piston is able to be salvaged, but it's better to buy a piston and a ring and replace it once the cylinder is in good shape. So you want to take a careful look at where the connecting rod is connected to the crank. You can see that's a needle roller bearing, so it's not a conventional bobbit bearing or a cap bearing. Now what I'm looking for in there and in that area over there is the clip for the wrist pin, the piston pin. You have to make sure you find that pin. You don't want it to be caught up in there or in the fan. So once you find that pin, then reassembling could start. So that gaskets need replacing. So you're also going to notice the same thing. On the wrist pin location, you have a needle roller bearing. So you have to make sure when you place this in, it doesn't have any play on it. Like I said, it's in very good condition. You could also test fit the pin. You could also test fit the pin with the roller bearing, making sure it has a snug fit, because the pin is most likely press fit into the piston. and it's free flowing in this area where it's in contact with the needle roller bearing. So you want to take careful inspection of all of that. So since this machine is only 50 hours of working since we bought it brand new, it's all evidence that it's good working condition. But all this stuff has to be cleaned and lubricate and put back together. So we have retrieved the two wrist pin from the piston pin, and that, I forgot where it was caught up. Oh, it fell on that magnet. You see here, this is two magnets that you have here on the flywheel for triggering the ignition. That's where most likely one of the pin is going to get stuck when you pop it out of location. You don't want it to get in there because that's going to be more difficult to getting it out. Now we had to remove these two screws from the bottom of the tank, and you see the tank comes apart completely with the carburetor. The only thing is you need to remove this bolt right here because it attaches to the frame right there, and you need to remove that bolt right there because it attaches to the frame right here. The bolt up here is just to detach the cables and all the wires to get them out of the way so you can have better access in getting in to the engine. But the only reason we did that was looking for that wrist pin. So you don't really need to take the tank off the machine framework. You just need to get the carburetor out of the way, and like I say, disconnecting this duct from the cylinder is going to be a very strategic part. This is the hose that connects here for the crankshaft, crankcase, positive ventilation. That will be a PVC, crankcase, positive crankcase ventilation. So that will be PCV. So this will be a PCV, or you could call it a breather since it doesn't have the valve on it. Or what it does, it goes back in there and it goes into this hose right here to feed back into the carburetor for burning any gas that blows by down into the crankcase. So it evacuates. It's a vent for pulling vapor out of the crankcase when the engine is running. So that's about it. This is the flywheel, this is the fan. So when you take a look here, you see the fan. It pulls air in from here and along the bottom, and then it's able to exhaust it out of the top where the vent is. Very important that you have the cover for the engine. If you don't have the cover on the engine, that fan will not be able to function like it's intended to. So let's go ahead and clean up and get ready to reassemble with new parts. Let's take an inspection of the piston that was removed. So what happened is we had a case of detonation in this area, moving the land of the piston down, clamping down on the ring, and the bottom ring, which is this last one on the bottom, is completely in, which means it doesn't have that much tension against the cylinder wall for building compression. The top one is just smashed and stuck in the same area, but in other places it's able to move. So this piston is salvaged. This is no good. It's not really something we could reuse. So what I've done, I went to the STIHL dealer and I purchased a new piston, and we can see like this piston has a much superior ring because it's black, and it has a very, on the second last ring, it has an open gap which can be placed 180 degrees away from the gap on where this one is. So this gap will have to be in this area here where you see that pin, this will have to rotate right there and clamp down in that area when it goes into the cylinder. Now we want the second ring gap to be exactly 180 degrees away, so they're going to be on that side for maximum compression. So if we should get a blow by, normally you will get a little gas blowing by here in normal operating condition. It will not be able to escape that easy because it has to make its way all the way to this side to get down into the crankcase. So we see we have an arrow here on the top of the piston. We're going to have to look at and see when we're assembling where this arrow will have to be pointed for assembly. Now, this is the box it came in. So it's a 40 millimeter piston, and it's part number 4119/0, or is that a Q? That's got to be a 0. 30/2004. So now in this package, it's going to come with this piston, and you're also going to get this, a new wrist pin with a retainer clip. So we have not even opened this package yet, but we found only one retainer clip in here. So it's a good thing we saved these two, which going to be able to use with our assembly. And this is the old pin. We're really not going to reuse this since we have a new one. So that's it. See you in the next video. We're going to have the assembly of this piston, the pin, and fitting the retainer clips.